Okay, I wanted to get into some detail now that Forza 4 is out about the shifter changes that I made to make better quality shifters compatible with this Fanatec wheel. So some of you may remember that when Forza 3 came out, I went to the trouble of taking this SST Lightning shifter and adapting its outputs so that it would be compatible with this wheel. And back when I first made my comments and went through all that effort, I said that this was a high quality shifter. Well, it is compared to the default Fanatec shifter, but it's really not a very good shifter after further use and after spending some time with it. Let me tell you the good things about it. The good things about this thing is that it's got this metal clamp here that you can see. It makes it easy to mount. The shifter here can be adjusted so that it rotates or mounts anywhere 360 within this circular area. So that makes it easy to kind of rotate around or mount on whatever stand you happen to have available and get it clamped down. But as far as feeling like a real shifter, it just doesn't. Part of the problem with that is that this shifter it's an 8-position shifter. So, there's a shift here, 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 and so on and so forth. It's not really how a real shifter in a car works. Most of the time the gears are centered on 3 and 4, and if you push up, you'll be in 3, and down, you'll be in 4. In this, if you push up, you won't go anywhere, or you'll slide into one of a random gear here, because 1 is just slightly up and to the left. 2 is slightly down and to the left. So there's and if you go kind of like you would with a normal car and you just push over to the left and down, you could end up all the way over, or you could end up a little bit over. And that's confusing. So that's the first problem with this, is that it's just laid out kind of, this pattern is good if you know exactly what you're doing and you get used to it, because it is a little faster, on the order of milliseconds than it is with a real feeling shifter, but it's not intuitive at all. And if you sit somebody down that knows how to drive stick and you try to get them to use this thing, they will miss shifts and they will be confused. That's the first thing that's wrong with this thing. The second thing is that if you look at this in second gear, I've mapped it to kind of this 1, 2, 3, 4, and I've mapped this second gear to down here, is that it doesn't really center properly here. Okay, if you move it all the way down, that's one piece, but then if you actually let it center, it actually goes up a little bit. I don't know if you can see that, but here's all the way down, and then it likes to pop out to here. Problem is that when it pops out to here, it actually loses contact with second gear, and it looks like you're in neutral. So that's no good, and that can happen when if you're shaking your frame when you're driving or pushing pedals around. It can easily pop out, and it will lose contact with the switch that it's supposed to be contacting when it's all the way down like this, and it will just cause you to go into neutral. So that can be fixed by disassembling the whole thing, thickening up the switch a little bit with some tape so that the little bar down here does contact the switch even when it's up like this, but that's something most people aren't going to do anyway, and it's just a little sloppy. Finally, probably the last annoying thing about this, even though it's obviously not designed to be modified, but it really is hard to modify. The switches down here, I had to basically wire up custom wiring out of this thing and make contact and wire them up to a port to get them to work properly. So it's it's just not that easy to mod. It obviously wasn't designed to be modded, but for the purposes of what I'm trying to do, it's just a little difficult. But really, the main point is just how it feels. You can't sit somebody down and have them use it, and it's a little embarrassing actually to spend all this effort on something like this, make a custom circuit board that translates the outputs correctly, and then have it not even feel like a real shifter. So that brings us to the next point, which is the new shifter that I got, which is a Thomas Super Wheel 6-speed shifter. And wow, this is a lot better. I'll tell you why. First of all, it does have this nice knob on top. It looks like a real shifter knob. It probably is a real one. Second of all, it's it's very heavy duty. I mean, it's a little bulkier than you might like, but it was easy to mount, and with a block of wood here, it was easy to mount to my Arduino cockpit, so that was good. And most importantly, it does feel like a real shifter. This is centered on 3rd and 4th. If I push up, I'm in 3rd. If I push down, I'm in 4th. Amazing. You push a little bit to the left and up, you're in 1. A little bit down to the left, you're in 2. All the way to the right and up, 5 and 6. This is a gated shifter pattern, so you have to be a little bit more careful. I mean, you can't just kind of go diagonally. It is actually gated, but it behaves like a real shifter. I mean, gated is fine as long as it's doing the right thing. And then it actually has extra resistance for moving all the way to the left and going into reverse. Again, like a traditional, Porsche or BMW type of shifter. So just a lot better overall than the SST Lightning shifter. And this really is high quality. I mean, you've got resistance here. It's just a little lighter resistance than you might experience in a real car when you're shifting, but it is very easy to get used to, and it behaves intuitively. So that's great. That's the first part of this. And then in terms of getting this thing to work, if you look, gosh, I guess let me try to get this angle here. Well, I don't know if that's easy to see, but there's a control box right here. I'm trying to get that here in focus. Okay, let's give up on that. There's a little control box down here where all the wires, all the shifter switches wire out to, and so it's actually pretty easy to just adapt the output of this into something that can feed into a circuit like this. It's not direct. I mean, I had to invert the inputs, but it still worked. But the nice thing I did was I took it a little bit further, and I decided that it would be cleaner if I didn't have to modify this joystick at all, and I could just take the USB output of this shifter and translate the outputs, translate the actual USB control messages coming out of the shifter, and put them directly into the wheel. So how do I do that? I mean, I need some, basically a microcontroller or a processor and something to, create analog voltages. And what I did was I used this open source platform called the Arduino, which I think hopefully some of you are familiar with, but most people probably won't be. But the Arduino is an open source platform. It incorporates a low power microcontroller, and with a little bit of work, I've gotten this thing to be a very clean way to just translate the USB signal and output the correct voltage. The Arduino platform is the bottom board, and then you have these two boards stacked on top of it, which are generally known as Arduino shields. What's going on here is that the Arduino itself is being powered by one USB cable, which you can see there. I'm using an iPod power adapter, basically. The second shield here is a USB host shield that I purchased online. You can look that up, and that's what the joystick slash shifter here is actually connected to. So normally this shifter is designed to be a PC compatible shifter, but by plugging it into here, I've managed to translate the USB outputs and start parsing them. That's the input piece. You can look up USB host shield. You can look up the libraries for it, and you can also look up USB joystick, which is a library that somebody wrote to parse the USB outputs. So the last part of this is, now that I've got a library and code to load up the Arduino, power it up with this cable, plug the joystick in, and actually read the outputs. Now you have the third piece, which is this custom shield I made on top that is actually connecting to the Fanatec wheel right here with a PS2 cable. And this was much simpler to build than a custom circuit board, obviously. Custom circuit board was still a useful learning experience, but I think this is much cleaner, obviously, overall. And what all this does, really, is I purchased what's called an Arduino Proto Shield from sparkfun.com. And I purchased a little PS2 breakout board and then a PS2 port. So otherwise it comes with most of these parts, and then I just had some little bit of wire and some resistors. And of course, the goal in order to make something compatible with the Fanatec wheel is to basically generate certain voltages on the X and Y axis for the Fanatec to understand it. So it's not easy to do that with an Arduino because it's digital, but with this technique called pulse width modulation and what's called a low-pass filter. If you guys aren't EE, you'll have to look this up. But essentially, it's a way of translating digital outputs into an analog voltage. And the resistors and capacitors let you do that. So there are some details in terms of what you select for the resistor and capacitor values. You're basically trading off the settling time of how quickly it arrives at that voltage so that the shifting is responsive, versus other considerations like how much the signal ripples. But I just selected basically the values 4.7K for the resistors. This totals to about 4.7K here, and then the capacitor being 1 microfarad. So you can't. I guess one word of warning is this Proto Shield takes up a little bit of space, and the breakout board takes a little space. So you can't solder all the parts of the Proto Shield onto it. You have to leave a couple off here so that you can get this on here. But you really don't need many of the parts at all on here. They're kind of extraneous. They're just good to have on there just because, I mean, why not? It's kind of useless to throw them away in a bag. So anyway, this works. This is much cleaner than having to build this board and wire out something from here, which is a huge pain in the butt. And I think most people on the internet will never be able to duplicate this, but with a little less effort, you can easily buy this Arduino, which is standard, this USB host shield, which is standard, and then buy a little Proto Shield and wire up or solder in some parts, a couple of parts. That's much, much easier than trying to source a custom circuit board or build your own. So I'm a lot happier with this. The shifter is better overall, just way, way better. I mean, I've had people come over and use it, and they comment that it's just easy to use and it feels right. So that's kind of what I was going for. And this is much cleaner in terms of being a smaller, more modular approach, and not having to modify the shifter at all to make it work. So that's really clean, and it responds quickly. And of course, the last piece here is just to show you that this actually works. So shifter here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So I think with all that being said, it's obviously just a lot more fun to drive with something that feels real like this. I don't know if it's easy to explain, but if you ever try it, you'll immediately get it. And it makes the experience a whole lot more fun. So thanks for watching. If you have any questions, just post them on the comments. I'll try to get to them. And I'll hopefully get a couple of instructions online so that people can do this themselves. I don't know how many of you will. I mean, this is a pretty expensive shifter. You kind of have to be into this thing to do it. But, just in case. I mean, I'd love for other people to try this out if they're really passionate about the game and about setting something up that's realistic. So, thanks again.